Greetings, hi, TheWarOwl greets you, and I just had the pleasure of being part of the Evolve Alpha over the weekend, so I'm just going to be chatting with you here about the potential of this game. Now, I don't think it's fair to give the game a review or nitpick on it or anything while it's still in the alpha phase of development. Hey look, it already has over 60 awards, and it's not even out of alpha. Thanks, gaming journalism. The reason I'm interested in Evolve is because it was made by the same studio that worked on certain parts of Counter-Strike. They're also the guys who made Left 4 Dead, Turtle Rock Studios. So, with such an impressive pedigree, how are they handling being weaned from the massive teat of Valve software? So what is Evolve? It's a Monster Hunt multiplayer game, a 1 versus 4 experience. Basically, one player plays as a monster, and 4 other players play as monster hunters trying to kill it. The monster levels up over time by killing creeps, that is, killing and eating the wildlife, until he reaches level 3, where he's strong enough to end the game by MacGuffin. The hunters are 4 unique player classes, each with a specific role, who need to work together and kill the monster before he reaches that point. They gotta actively hunt him down, trap him, and kill him. It reminds me, or may have been inspired by, a source mod from back in the day called Hidden. In the game, one player played as an invisible monster who had Spider-Man abilities. It was really fun. The rest play as generic heavily armed soldier dudes who spout off references to cliche 80s action movies. It's what a good Predator game would look like. So back to Evolve. On the surface, it's a great concept. It promises to be a good multiplayer experience while offering a bit of variety to every play. Each of the player classes handles a little bit differently and has their own unique role. I took the time to play as all 4 of them as well as all the monsters that are currently available. There's probably going to be more stuff added. Each of them have 4 different abilities that need to be used, cooperating with other teammates. There's a damage dealer, a healer, a support, and a crowd control character. The difficulty I see here is that because of this, the game requires communication. To cooperate, you need to communicate. And since each player class is so important, since you're actually having to work together to hunt the monster down, you'd think you need to come up with some kind of a plan. The players I came across in the alpha were very antisocial. In every game that I played, nobody talked to me. There was only one game where people were actually willing to speak with me on the microphones and sort of walk me through what was going on and plan and stuff. But that was just 3 of us who were doing that. The other guy just had no idea, was just wandering off on his own. Because the game targets the wider audience, the majority of the players are going to be major derps. It's just the fact of it. One player in a game of 5 who doesn't know what they're doing or who doesn't understand the concept of teamwork ruins the entire game. If the healer goes off on his own and gets eaten, it's GG. If the damage dealer doesn't know how to deal damage, which that actually happened in one of my games, it's GG. If the monster just attacks outright at the start of the game, he dies. It's GG. In fact, the game seems to think so lowly of its intended player base that mechanics of finding the monster, the tracking and sniffing out of the monster, is given to an AI dog. This is why I can really see this game only being fun with a group of friends. 5 is a weird number of friends. 4 is sort of the magic number. Every game in the history of time, 4 players, man. You had 4 controllers. Back in the day, it was 2, I guess. But come on now. 4 is the magic number of players. This has 5. I'm not really going to fault it for that. I think it should be a variable amount of players, like Hidden, where you could play maybe with 4 to 8 would be a good number. Not sure. But Hidden is also a game that's really good when playing with friends. Now, Hidden wasn't a balanced game. It wasn't a brilliant concept. It had great moments. It was fun with friends and created a good sense of dread, of tension. The encounters with the monster were incredibly entertaining. What Evolve does well is provide an objective at all times, a reason to hunt the monster, to actively pursue it, and a reason for the monster to try and hide and level up. It's very objective-based. The tension in this game is very different than what you'd expect from a monster game, because there's no real fear of the monster. When you die in Evolve or you get knocked down, you can be saved Left 4 Dead style or just respawn. To win, the monster has to completely dominate all 4 players at the same time. This means it doesn't really make sense for the monster to pick off enemies one at a time like they would in Predator. It makes more sense for him to hide and eat stuff and level up. This, to me, puts the tension onto the monster player, not the hunters. The only tension for the hunters is as time goes by, they know the monster is getting stronger, so there's this real tense rush like, oh gosh, we need to find this guy quickly or we lose. And that actually was very enjoyable to me. I much prefer a game where it's possible to 1v1 the monster. That's just my personal preference. And when players die, they die. They're dead. It adds that extra element of not wanting to die, which this game doesn't really have unless you're the monster. The battles with the monster, or as the monster, are really fun. It felt like a mix of movement, twitch-based shooting, and managing multiple abilities, sort of like taking World of Warcraft, taking down a raid boss, add in some like Borderlands-style shooting. It was a really good time in those engagements, and since that's the core gameplay, you know, the climax of it, it's something that'll be repeated over and over again. This is a good thing. But would it get repetitive? Each engagement felt the same. Once you figured out how your character worked, you kind of just did the same thing over and over again, cycling between the abilities. Jamie Graysomer, which I probably mispronounced, of Bungie, said of Halo, if you can get 30 seconds of fun, you can pretty much stretch that out into an entire game. Bungie then proved him wrong by making Destiny. The correct quote should be, if you can get gaming journalism to give you hollow praise before a game is even finished, you can pretty much stretch that out to be an entire game. Nevertheless, the solution of the modern multiplayer FPS to this problem, the issue of replayability, is unfortunately an XP system. I despise experience systems in multiplayer games. It insults the intelligence of the consumer. It's like you need to be rewarded for every little thing that you do, patted on the back, reassured that you're special, that you're doing something great. Look at you. You got a headshot plus 200. Now, it's not as bad as it was in Call of Duty or Titanfall, but it's still there. Yeah, multiplayer games shouldn't work that way. You're being pitted against and working with other players, not an AI. Giving an unfair advantage, perks, better equipment, all of that to players at the start of the game ruins it. In a good multiplayer FPS game, your character doesn't get better, you get better. There are other ways to improve the game beyond an experience and leveling system. Like, how about putting the experience and leveling system into the game, into the rounds? Sort of like how the monster works. How about a skill tree for each of the players on each game? You start out with an empty skill tree and you can fill them out. Very simple skill tree. Maybe the humans can kill the creeps and level up in mid-game as well. Sort of like how the monster is set up. Or allowing access to all of the loadouts to all players. Give everybody all the guns at the start, and they can experiment with what they think works. The part of the skill of the game would be setting up your loadout to complement your teammates. You could come up with all kinds of awesome strategies and combinations, or even allowing players to choose what character they want to play as, or maybe even using 3 damage dealers and one healer would pay off. I don't even know. Or maybe add new interesting characters that you can play to, that you can switch to, and all these things. It makes balance more difficult, but at the end of the day, it makes gameplay over time less repetitive and more fun. It adds hours into the playtime beyond just repetitive doing the same thing over and over again. I doubt they will go this direction. This is a $60 AAA appeal to the widest possible audience game, like Titanfall, like Destiny, like Call of Duty. I'm surprised you can't just walk over to the side and start planting crops and growing things or something. I don't know. Which, it's such a damn shame, because it's such a great concept, one that could really be expanded upon. I will remark that the game is not balanced as it is, which is probably the purpose of this alpha, to help with balance. So I wouldn't fault the game for that until they actually release it. My favorite mechanic in the game is the armor. The monster eats to level up, but it also gains armor as it eats. Its health is limited and doesn't rejuvenate. This allows for momentum and multiple engagements, lengthening the game over time, not just making it feel like it's already over at any given point. There's no sense of momentum carries throughout the game. It's never over. The monster can always come back by getting more armor. And at the same time, when wounded, the heroes feel like they actually have accomplished something with an engagement. It's also worth noting that when evolving, the monster loses his armor, leaving him vulnerable to attack during those precious seconds, the perfect time to strike. To me, this adds great possibilities for strategy to the game. At the end of the day, any game modes or anything that they add to it, I don't really see this being worth $60. So far, from my perspective, it's a good game with good promise for release, but it's way too expensive. It has those modern FPS tropes in it, and it doesn't really seem to know its audience. The mass market COD kiddies don't like teamwork. This is a game where you can screw your team over by just wandering away from them. And hardcore gamers don't like XP systems in multiplayer games, or game features being watering down and simplified. This game tries to sit between those two markets. Here's hoping that they can manage to balance that fine line, sort of like how Left 4 Dead did it. And how Left 4 Dead did it was by making it really simple what had to be done and how to use your character. If somebody falls over, you press a button to pick them up. It's guns. Everybody knows how guns work. This gun shoots more bullets. This gun is a shotgun. It does a lot of damage, and you gotta be close up. Everybody gets that. Everybody understands that. And the communication aspect can even be given over to the characters themselves. In Left 4 Dead, the characters talk to each other. You're sort of on a rail the whole time. You go from point A to point B. It's really simplistic. And stuff can always happen. Like, as you go from point A to point B, there's different things to look at. There's different things going on. There's different engagements that happen that keep you interested throughout the entire time. This game doesn't have the benefit of that. Either way, I'd probably pay $25 for it, and it's what I spent on Natural Selection 2, which, while Natural Selection 2 isn't a AAA game, it's a comparable game. Good premise, promising execution, overhyped, and infected with modern FPS gaming tropes. Thanks for watching. I'm TheWarOwl, and I still have no closer.